it's empowered them, but we can also use that power, and we need to. Because I think if we don't, then it's just going to spiral out of control, and a lot of times that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
It has.
You're listening to Find the Good News, Episode 81, The Comforter, featuring Eugenie Tullos. Find the Good News is produced by Parker Brand Creative Services, a branding agency that thinks sideways, pushes forward, and gets your brand up. See what else we do at parkerbrandup.com. More often than not, my visits with guests of Find the Good News take place nearly a month or more before they air. Normally, that's not a sobering or surreal experience, but so much has changed in our world since the time that this episode was recorded. Not long after this visit, as I'm quite certain you know, the world was changed by the new coronavirus and the medical complications brought on by COVID-19. Social distancing, quarantine, masks, gloves, disinfectant, shortages, misinformation, sacrifices, selfishness, selflessness, despair, hope, isolation, innovation, lies, heroes, takers, helpers. These are just the words that come immediately into my mind as I reflect on the current state of the world as framed by my conversation with the guest in this episode, Eugenie Tullos. If anything, the state of the world today actually made key moments in our conversation stand out even more. Eugenie Tullos is one of the helpers, the heroes, the innovators, one of the beings that has been working in the world in a selfless way, sacrificing and comforting others with presence, truth, and hope. Her job as a loving caregiver has required physical closeness for many years, so hearing our visit in the light of this time of distancing reminded me of the crucial value of human proximity, especially now that we don't have it. This conversation isn't about the global pandemic, but it is filled with advice, perspectives, and information about the very best nature of humanity. It's that best nature, Eugenie's nature, the nature of love, care, and truth, that will be so important when the blanket of this virus is lifted from the world. Human closeness will return, and when it does, I plan to cherish it in ways reflective of this visit. I invite you to listen to my conversation with Eugenie Tullos, a time not too long ago when I, like many others, may have taken those around me for granted in small, almost undetectable ways. A time when togetherness was in abundance, presence was a luxury, and the smiling faces of strangers were not covered by protective masks. Now, let's press play on a little good news.
Wake up, it's morning. You're dreaming up a story. I can hear the way it's going, 'cause you're laughing in your sleep on the path to your deliverance, and a holy wall of light pouring through your window.
Old news, bad news, fake news. Sometimes you just want to shut it all down and get no news at all. With Find the Good News, I aim to change that by focusing on good people doing good work. I visit with artists, educators, civic and spiritual leaders, musicians, business owners, students, volunteers, and everyday citizens who are using their creativity, resources, and talents to bring hope and happiness to their corner of the world. In each episode, I dig into the hearts and minds of my extraordinary guests. We have street-level conversations about relatable things going on in their lives. Discover the critical life experiences that shape them, the perspectives that drive them, and the fundamental beliefs that are anchoring them to a path of goodness. There's a lot of news in the world. My name is Oran Parker, and I'm going to find the good.
And I love you just as well.
Do a hard open. We do like a sort of soft open, just lead right in with conversation. I felt like that was better for me anyway, because I didn't want this to be a real hardline interview style show, because that's not really my nature anyway. Just more conversational, and then we walk around until we figure some things out.
I picked that up just in listening to the few that I did listen to.
Yeah. Did you have anything that stood out to you when you were listening?
Just that it made me feel good.
Oh, good.
And that I liked.
And what do you think that's about? Why do you think that is? I'm curious.
Probably because I know I'm not alone. There's so much news out there that's not good, and somebody finding it and realizing it's right here in our community, like, okay, that makes me feel better.
Yeah, it's not all. Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's easy to get in this sort of trap of thinking that everything that's going on this national scale is all that news is about, and you can forget that there's just ordinary people, trying to live their lives and do the very best they can do and be good people and help each other to whatever capacity they can, and I think that's something that just gets so overlooked. We're always looking for, like, maybe the next story that's going to pull your heartstrings, or the next, cute group of kids that's out there changing the world. And I'm not down on that stuff at all. I think that's all great, but I think sometimes it's just ordinary plain folk that that are doing things within the cracks of society,
And you don't brag about that. I mean, I think that takes away from it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you're just doing it. So every now and then having somebody else come along and just come up with ideas or comments about what they're doing makes you feel like you're with an army.
Yeah, exactly. Even if you don't know each other, hey, I haven't. That's kind of the word I would use to describe you, actually, because I was, I do my light cyber stalking for most of the guests who have social profiles, and I go look at the kinds of things they post. And I mean, you posted something about that already. We already curate that kind of thing in our friends that we have online. When you realize something's really getting a bit toxic, it's like, look, I don't have to have this. I can kind of tune the dial, take that out of my life. And I was reading your post about that, and I was like, yeah, I've done the same thing. You're right. I think that's of high value to me to change the dial a little bit if it's bad for me.
It was something at first I thought about when I had the option to unfollow versus unfriend, but it turned out to be people that I've known, a lot of them, most of my life.
Yeah.
We just didn't have the same values. And there's no reason to keep up with people that I have nothing in common with. Not that I'm trying to be a snob about it.
Sure.
But I just don't like what they say and how they believe, and I can't be around it.
Right.
I really can't. It takes too much of my energy.
Yeah, I struggle with that. But we're about to really get off in it here, because many years ago, I mean, gosh, I'd even say over a decade ago, I kind of had this real broad view that even blood was not enough of a bond to stick it out with somebody that was actually harmful to you. And I guess I would say I maybe leaned a little bit away from that, because it was a pretty hard line view that I had about it. But oddly enough, I feel my pendulum kind of swinging back towards that and just going, look, for me to live a life that has any kind of principle or value, or stand by whatever moral code I have, or honor I have, or even just listening to my conscience, there are going to be times, and there are times, where blood just is the very thing that's hurting me. It's the very voices that actually are coming for me.
And maybe those are our crosses.
Yeah.
Maybe that's what we're supposed to bear. But I can't do it. I can tell you how I feel, and I really believe that what I feel is based in love. Everything. Mm-hmm. From the animals that I post about, the cute little animals, to the babies, to do good for others, to be good. That's it. And if you can't do that, I really don't have any time for that. There are too many people I need to reach. And I don't necessarily do it on Facebook.
Right.
I don't.
Right. Well, that's okay. This is great. So, obviously, somebody thought highly of you and recommended you for the show. And, you know, I respect everybody that's been on here, their opinion, because I think they're all really good people. But the person who recommended you is somebody that I really, really respect, and has kind of had an effect on my life that's like a hinge, you know. And I can definitely draw lines to that person's influence and who I am today. And so I'd like to just kind of rewind from that statement. You said, you know, I may do good for people, but it's not something that I just post online. You know, it's actually real works in the world. So let's go back. Let's talk about that. What do you mean when you say you do good for people?
Well, I don't necessarily want to go into the details of what I've done.
Okay.
But I will tell you that just thinking about somebody else and what their needs are will strengthen you. here's an example. My sister and I were cutting up and talking about the lottery.
Yeah.
And she said, I've got a ticket for the Powerball. And I never remember to play. I said, good, if you win. It was like millions. I said, will you give me $1 million? She said, no, you're just going to give it away. And you know what? I was like, right. But that's where I find my joy. And so it's just in doing it's being in McDonald's and paying for the guy's order behind you.
Small acts.
It is. It's all about pay it forward.
Yeah.
One of my favorite movies.
Yeah, it's a great movie. You're right. I actually totally agree. I was listening to a book by Richard Rohr this morning, and there was something he was talking about in that regard about how when you unfold your heart towards a stranger, how the stranger then, that you think it's your light that you're bringing to them, but in that process, that person actually becomes illumination for you.
Oh, absolutely. I get way more out of it than they do. Way more.
Yeah.
And I love Richard Rohr, by the way.
Yeah, do you?
I'm surprised the Pope hadn't come for him.
Well,
he's a great guy, though. He really is.
I think, well, from what it sounds like and listening to some of his interviews, there have been people come after him so many times in his life. I think he's over it.
He has evolved, and I think we all are on our own journey, and some of us have evolved more so than others. Some need structured religion, some don't. But the bottom line and the crux of it all is love, and that's it. It's so simple. I think it was made that way.
Yeah, no, I agree. And it's, I mean, look, I find loving broadly to be pretty easy. For me, broadly. Like, I was thinking about that this morning. I did a little walk before I came to work, and I was thinking about how when I get into a certain space, it's very easy to kind of unfold my love towards unknown strangers, and just everybody, because we're all in this long arc of history together, filled with all kinds of pains and sufferings. But then I thought how much more difficult it becomes to love, particularly when you really start drilling down into someone who maybe hurts you or comes after you, or maybe you give and then they're depleting you, because that does happen. I mean, you can be taken advantage of, but you still want to maintain that divine love. How much more of a challenge, I guess, it is in those circumstances, and that's, to me, where I grow.
Well, that's all about love your enemy.
Yeah, right, exactly.
It's really easy to love those that love you back. I mean, I get that.
Or that broad, wide shot where I'm disconnected from. Like
when I unfriended everybody. But you know what? I loved them, but I didn't love what they were preaching. Okay.
Sure, I get that.
Let's face it. I mean, there's some people in there, the things that they believe in, the values they have. My mother was raising us in the 60s by herself.
Oh, really?
And that was almost unheard of, unless someone died.
How many of y'all were there?
4.
4?
My dad, he took off. Well, and for that, I've forgiven him. But, okay, my dad is gay.
Yeah, my son's gay.
Back then, they didn't know what to do with that, so they did what they thought they should do, and he was miserable. But when he left, he left. And so she had it all on her.
Interesting,
And I saw what people did for her, for us. Whether it was a ride to the grocery store to provide. And she had 3 jobs, one of which was a DJ, by the way.
Really?
But she was amazing. And all the things that she showed us, I think it's what grows within us. Because each one of us, my brother and my sister as well, they have that inside, that need to help others and do good.
Yeah.
Just because it's been done for us.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Life can make, when you're facing troubles, it's so easy to let it make you coarse, and just sort of callous you and toughen you up. And I do think that maybe there's a lot of sentiment out in the world like that, especially now, that's just like, hey, toughen up, toughen up, or your feelings don't matter, that kind of language. And I almost, when I hear those types of things, I go, don't you realize that that's actually the problem?
It is a problem.
That's actually
I was working at 911 answering the telephones, and I mean, it was a very stressful job. I was enjoying it. I was getting a thrill out of it, but I was told more than once that I was too nice.
On the calls?
Oh, yeah.
What does that mean? Like, how can you be too nice on a 911? I think what they were trying
to say was that, well, you've got somebody hysterical on the end, and you need to get that pertinent information. But it went beyond the scope of just that. And it was across the board and with my coworkers, and I wasn't going to put up with it.
Huh. I see.
But I understand why they were telling me that to one degree, but it was a good move when I left.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know what's happened to me, and I don't know where it came from or what little narratives in my life and circumstances shifted things for me, but at some point along the way, I just stopped celebrating hardness. I realized that it's not worth it.
That's good.
But it's almost a sad, but I wish I could say it's a joyous feeling, but if I'm being honest, it's almost like a little bit of sadness, because I tend to look out at the world and go, but it's so filled with hardness, and I don't want to see all of that. I want to see the softness. I want to see softness in people.
Well, you're doing that.
Yeah.
That's what you're doing. So that's probably where your mission comes from.
It's an effort, though, because I imagine, this is what I often reflect on, is I'm seeking it, right? Actively. And if I'm seeking that actively, and I still feel like I see so much hardness, what about the people that don't seek it actively? How much harder does the world look?
Yeah.
Does that make sense what
Absolutely.
I'm saying? And I just go, it's so sad. It makes me feel sad. It really does. I go, man, it's got to feel so damn lonely.
Well, I don't know where their mind is, but I think with yours, what you have to hang on to is just like the gold prospector or the guy looking for oil. That's not a pretty sight if you've ever watched them.
Right.
You're out there with a pickaxe hoping.
Yeah.
But when they find that vein of gold, it's amazing. And that's what you're doing. And every time you find a little nugget of it, it's going to keep you going. And that apparently is what you need to be facing that way. I think if you don't have anything to look forward to, it could get depressing. And maybe that's why there's so many people that are depressed now and on medication for it. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. I actually think you're probably right about that. I think about that quite a bit. I mean, I talk to a lot of people who are depressed. And, most of the people, if you sit, I mean, I'm sure you've experienced things like that. Most of the people, if you sit and talk to them long enough and really just let them tell you their life story, most people will say, oh, I definitely have a hand to play in my own problems. I've played my part. And when somebody's at that point where they're going, yeah, I could have done these 20 things differently, but at the same time, there's all these other factors that they have no control over. It's sad. I ain't gonna lie. I mean, sometimes when people go, well, they just need to toughen up, I just go, I don't know. I don't know about that.
Well, I think they need that beacon of light. I think that's what it is. And a lot of people have removed themselves from organized religion, families. And I don't know for sure about you, but I'm thinking we were all brought up that you did believe in God.
Yeah, I guess I'd be curious to hear what you were raised in. Yeah.
Well, we were Catholic, but my mother was not allowed to take communion and all that she dropped us off at church. She still had us doing all that.
Interesting.
And I thought about that later on in life. I'm like, golly, she's better than I am, because I probably would have said, forget it. But she knew they were wrong. So she continued to have us grow up going to catechism and going to mass when she didn't go.
Interesting.
But we didn't even understand why. And that's just one of those rules that the church made.
Yeah, no, I understand. See, I'm what's the best word? An estranged Catholic, I guess, but it's by my own hand. I mean, nobody did it. I did it. And honestly, I'm at a point now where I probably shouldn't even I shouldn't call myself a Roman Catholic. I mean, that's the truth.
Yeah, and I don't put it down because my family, they're Catholic. But
oh, sure, I understand what you mean. I mean,
I just think sometimes that man comes along and puts his own rules into what's supposed to be of God.
Yeah.
And that's just one of the things, and I just admire her because she did it anyway.
Yeah. It's interesting that you say it that way. I kind of gets into what we were talking about my dad with the video store, and it sticks out to me. It's funny how a little thing that was probably meant so little in the whole scope of your life sticks out. But I remember years ago, I was probably 12 years old, and Dad would go to Houston to buy all his movies that he would put in the video store. And one day I was sick, and so he had to take one of his little trips to Houston, and so we had, it was kind of an ordeal for him back then to have to babysit me all day. I wasn't feeling good, but he drugged me to Houston with him, and it was a good day. I remember just being kind of a good day with Dad, Well, we got to the big, I guess, movie warehouse, and there was this little front area, and when we walked in, Dad filled out his paperwork or whatever, and he was about to go back in the warehouse with his cart, and so we were walking, and the lady said, "Oh no, he can't go." He was talking about me. And my dad was kind of a hard ass. I mean, some things, but he didn't always handle things with a gentle touch. But he said, "Well, then, okay." He said, "Well, let's just wrap it up then." And so he handed her the cart back, and she said, "Oh, well, were you not going to go back and shop?" And he said, "No." He said, "You can go ahead and close my account out. I'm not going to go anywhere. I can't take my son."
Good for him.
And granted, I don't know what all the rules were and all the particulars, but in that moment, I don't know what it was on that day. I remember that very well, and I remember going, "Wow, this is how much my dad loves me, that he won't go a place that I am not really fully welcomed." Whether he did that his whole life and in other situations, I don't know. But in that moment in front of me, it said something to me. There came a point for me after I converted to Catholicism when I started to really realize that, yes, I wanted to share, the love of Christ with my son. And I realized that through dialogue with other parishioners that it was not going to happen. I might be able to individually show him that kind of an all-inclusive love, but there is going to come a day where he will not be fully able to, or to live his life fully within the framework of this entity that's called the Roman Catholic Church. Because he's going to want to get married as a gay man. He's going to want to have a relationship and a love life with somebody someday. He's going to want to adopt children, and he's a good person with a good heart, and I'm going to support those things. And I realize that that day will come. And do I want to sit at a table that my son can't sit at?
Nope.
And I realized that just like my father did, I was like, I have to make a choice here and say something by just my action alone. And I realized that I just have to I self-banished, my basically self-imposed exile. I was like, I'll dine out here, with the outcasts and the misfits and those who don't fit every particular crossed T and dotted I of the canon law. And I'll just love those people because there's a bunch of them.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
I feel like it is. I feel like it is, and my conscience tells me it is.
Well, of course. He didn't hang out with the popular people.
Yeah.
If he had, he wouldn't have had near the trouble he had. He was stirring it up because he was making an impact, but yet he was hanging out with the undesirables.
Yeah.
And that's who I emulate my life to be. That's what I want to be, Christ-like, really Christ-like.
Yeah. No, I hear you. I want to be, I for some reason feel called out to those odd colored places, if that makes any sense, where I tell people sometimes is that, red and yellow for me are very powerful symbols, and they symbolize a lot for me, but I love them because between the two is the color orange. And I challenge someone to show me where orange begins between those things. And that's kind of what I take as a philosophy, I guess, of operating, is like, I don't know what color it is between the two, exactly where it lands, and that's okay. There's people out there in between those two colors, operating and living their lives and loving and sharing and being kind and good and merciful.
So what do you consider yourself to be then, if not
Oh boy, that's a tough
we might be in the same clique, whatever
probably.
it is. I don't have a name for
recently I've actually, on principle, I've kind of stopped using the word Christian. Not because I don't by most standards consider myself one, but I have found that it is a name that has been appropriated by others for some nefarious purposes. And I realize too that when I go out into the world, and if I say I'm a Christian, there's all this gravity behind it and this long tail of history, and I have no control over what that person who I'm encountering's perception is of that word alone. You know, if I come forward to somebody and say I am a Christian, well, if they've had a bad experience with a particular clan of Christianity, that's what their perception is, and it stains my ability sometimes to even communicate with them. So what I've kind of begun doing is almost going back to what Paul references a few times as a follower of the way. You know, because early Christians didn't really call themselves Christians. That was later on. I said, I think I'd rather just leave it a little androgynous and nebulous in that regard. I mean, a lover of Christ.
That's kind of what I say. That's my example. And I feel like God is in everything, seriously everything. And there isn't just Christian or Jew. I mean, all of the different religions have their purpose. And I think I was born into Christianity because the example that has been set for me is that this universe, this thing, this God sent somebody down to show me how to do it. That's all. That's all it was. This is how you do it. And it's all about love. And that's it. And I really believe that. So it happened to be through Christianity, but it could be in someone else's religion.
Yeah.
Whatever that example is. But you're right. When you say Christianity, that you got to carry all that other baggage that comes along with it.
Yeah.
And it's not necessarily that, but that's the example that was set for me, and that's what I try to do.
Yeah.
That whole 90s thing of what would Jesus do? What would he do?
Yeah, very
right
simple.
now, what would he do? Seriously, I mean, he would be flipping out at what's going on in this country. And I don't want to talk politics, but just in general, all of it across the board.
Yeah.
All of it.
Yeah,
and a lot of it's done in his name.
Right.
That's a bummer. I would hate for somebody to say, I'm going to go out and I hate this group of people and I'm going to do it in the name of Eugenie.
Yeah.
Because that's really what it's about. Somebody set an example for us and nobody's following it. Well, I say that. They are, but so many aren't.
Yeah.
So,
well, really
spiritual.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, I mean, it's strange because on one hand, I do want people to which I mean, I guess, just let me backing up, that's partly why I wear a cross. Because on one hand, I want to, it helps keep me honest by wearing a cross out front. Because for one, it's a reminder, not a showing for everybody else out there, hey, here's what I believe. I don't care about that. I don't care if any, you know what I mean? But for me, it's like, hey, if I'm going to put this out front, let it be a reminder for me that I'm walking kind of in the light of that thing all day, every day. And so it should be reflected in my behavior, in the way I am. I mean, and it helps me. It really does, And so do I have to say and claim I'm a Christian out loud on some box? No, I hope people will be able to see it.
Right.
Like you said, as I'm following a way. I'm following a way, and I hope you can see it, and if you can't, then I got work to do.
Well, but I think that they at least need to understand what it is that they're spreading. I talk about love, but if somebody asks me, what is it that you have that, because I want some of that, I need to be able to tell them. I think there's a responsibility there too.
Yeah.
So for that, I am glad for the education that I received.
Yeah, for sure.
And all of that combined.
That's right. It's interesting you say that because there's something, I didn't think we were going to talk about this stuff, but something that really kind of, I don't know why it stings me a little bit, is when I do meet a lot of people who are spiritual, and we have lots of really good conversations, and love is shared between us. But there's every once in a while a comment that's like, well, religion is all made up by men and mankind, and we don't need it. They're all saying the same thing. And when I hear that, it doesn't upset me or anything. I go, well, I kind of disagree. I think religion has been very good in the sense that they're keeping sort of like these archives of history. I mean, we've got great holy texts and wonderful practices and these interesting religious cultures and teachings. And I mean, gosh, just having an archives of saints with their writings that are protected, those are beautiful things. So in that sense, I think religion is very good, and it gives us something that we can practice and dive into when we're really, for me especially, I can only speak of myself, when I'm feeling weak. When I'm going, look, right now I'm in the wrong frame of mind. Maybe I'm going through some things and I'm just not feeling in the right space. I can dive myself into a religious practice. It's something to lean on, like a walker, until I can get my strength back.
Well, you've done your research.
You know?
But I have a story. Our family is originally from New Orleans, and my great-grandmother had a grocery store. They were Italian. I think they had them on every corner. And Mother Cabrini, which is St. Francis Cabrini, ran the orphanage in New Orleans, and she would come by the grocery store. My grandmother would give her sugar and flour for the orphans, and they had small talk. And one day she went in there, my grandmother was crying. She said, "What's wrong?" She said the baby, that she just had a baby, is not going to make it. She won't eat. The doctors have given up on her. She was just little, maybe 4 ounces, just carried her on a pillow. And so St. Francis took off her cross. I forgot the name of it, but it's not actually a cross when the nuns take it off, and pinned it to her and said, "We're going to do this 9-day novena," which is a prayer every day for 9 days. And on the 9th day, this baby will eat. And she did. And it was my great aunt who lived to be in her 90s, and she still had the cross. And I mean, that sealed my faith when I was a little girl.
Sure.
'Cause they told me that story. And it's things like that. That's what keeps me going.
I see.
So, yeah, we do have to know something. We can't go out there blindly and just tell everybody peace, love, and crabs. It's not necessarily like that. You really do have to have some kind of basis to tell them this is the path that you need to take, and here's the instructions.
Yeah, no, I agree. Something to lean on. I always think of it as a walking stick. I need some kind of walking stick that I can come back to whenever I'm confronted with things that really challenge my ability to navigate them, honestly. I mean, and most of the time for me, it's usually something where things have fallen apart.
Well, in real life, I mean, Facebook is not real life. I can unfriend these people because I don't see them every day anyway. But if it's your family, it's in your household, and someone hurts you, you can't just turn them off and unfollow and unfriend. So that's where forgiveness comes in, and I learned all of that from the Bible.
Sure.
And it's so easy to forgive. I will have conversations about how mad I am with somebody that has done me wrong over and over again, and how I'm never going to listen to them again. I'm never going to talk to them again. The next thing you know, they call. "I'm really sorry." "Oh, okay, it's fine." Immediately, that's what I think people in general want. Just the acknowledgement that you hurt me.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean that you even have to be wrong to say you're sorry.
And I'm happy, I know it. I'm helpless.
Sorry for interrupting the conversation, but I have something I need to tell you about. You may or may not know this, but this podcast is produced in the city of Sulphur, Louisiana, one of the sister cities that make up Southwest Louisiana. All of my childhood memories are wrapped up in the city of Sulphur. It's my home, and it's been a good home for most of my life. There is a growing diversity of unique businesses, services, and events in Sulphur, each with a rich and colorful story to tell about their particular place in this little jewel on the west side of the Calcasieu River. My mission is to promote good news, to put a positive signal out in the world. That's why my team at Parker Brand Creative Services has created the new brand, Sulphur Today. Here's how it works. Post your Sulphur event, service, photos, videos, or information using the hashtag #SulphurToday. That's it. My team and I will scan and curate those posts through the social media platforms we've put in place. Before you make your post, just type hashtag. That's a £sign for the folks that don't know what a hashtag is. And the words Sulphur Today with no space. My team at Parker Brand is monitoring this tag right now, and they're ready to create positive digital curb appeal for our city by sharing all the very best Sulfur has to offer through the Sulfur Today social media pages. As the Sulfur Today project grows, we will be scheduling interviews and video sessions with businesses, events, and services so they can tell their story of Sulfur Today in a series of ongoing micro-documentaries. Look for the eye-catching Sulfur Today sign when you're out and about. And be ready, we may be stopping by to visit you for a photo op. And don't forget to stop by the Parker Brand Creative Services studio in Sulphur to grab a Sulphur Today decal for your vehicle or business. We want people visiting our area to know that they can find all the wonderful things we have to offer with ease and be a part of our history by utilizing the Sulphur Today pages or by searching the Sulphur Today hashtag. Do you want to help us tell the story of Sulphur Today? Here's what I need you to do right now. Visit and like the Facebook page at facebook.com/Sulphur Today. And be sure to share positive sulfur information and post often using the hashtag Sulphur Today. Now, back to Find the Good News.
I love you just as well.
It's interesting that you talk about that with Scripture. I was talking about this with my wife and maybe a coworker the other day. I was like, you're going to find in Scripture what you go looking for. And I find that I get a lot more joy out of Scripture when I go in there on a treasure hunt, so to speak, with my good news metal detector. And it's like, okay, I'm looking for proof in these Scriptures that God is merciful, God is love, all are included, that all of creation, is singing that glory, that we're all connected. When I go looking for that, that's what's illuminated.
Yeah, and there's a lot of preachers that go looking for fire and brimstone. I get it. I know there's an evil to all the good, but I don't look for that. I just would rather look for the good.
Yeah, there's something lighter about that. And it's still, what's strange is, I guess I've heard people say, well, you got to look at both because that's reality. And I go, yeah, but that good news is reality too, and it imprints on everything as well.
I think it can change things. I know it can. I believe in quantum physics, and I think about how everything we do, the frequency of it, it's never ending. Well, why would I want to portray anything but good?
Yeah.
I think it's going to win. I think in the end result, it always does. Light can take away darkness with just a flicker of a flame.
It's interesting, when we were talking about Richard Rohr, he said something, and I'll probably not relay it right, but he said something in this book I'm reading, and he was talking about light. We think we can see light, like we're looking for light, as in like a light beam. And he said, but really light is that by which we see other things.
Okay.
And I was like, that
makes
sense. An interesting way to view that. And he was talking about Christ as light, and if you think of Christ in that perspective, Christ is the light by which we can view everything else. I was like, that's a beautiful perspective, to not just look for a flame or a beam of light, but to actually look out at the world and say, it is by this light that I am able to see anything at all. It's like, that's kind of a beautiful perspective. What do you think about that?
I like that. And I was thinking about all the different religions when you were saying that, whether it's the Jewish community or the Episcopalian. Well, no, because they would necessarily do that. But I think that we all need that. I think that's what's important about education. And I don't know how to I don't personally know how to reach someone that I've done good for, because I feel like I need to leave them with something. I don't know where to direct them. I really don't. I'm just telling you that. I don't have that answer. I can show them what goodness is through Christ, because that's really the only reason why I can do it. It's not me. I give him all the glory, but then what do I do with that person? Don't you kind of feel responsible? I do.
Like, as far as like where you could lead them with some place.
I need you to understand that this is not just me. This is something else, and you have it too.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, that's right. You don't want to leave anybody, especially if you find yourself in a position to console someone or counsel someone or help.
Or they may end up with nothing one day but the ability to give to someone else, and that's enough to sustain you. I know.
Yeah.
I've had that happen in my life.
Yeah.
I know what it's like to have nothing.
I can't remember who who the saint is, but there's a prayer that I had found in the back of a missal years ago, and in the last couple of years I went and looked up the whole thing. It's very long. I think it might be, I don't want to say, I'll mess it up, but anyway, you probably heard it before, but it's so beautiful, and I can only recall like pieces of it. But it begins with, come true light, come life eternal, come hidden mystery, come person beyond understanding, come treasure without name.
That's great. I wouldn't have remembered any of that.
Oh, I love it. I love that, the beginning of that, because it's all mystery and light and unnameable, and it's something that if you read the whole thing, it's pulling you towards the mystery, but it's also telling the other that this mystery exists within your very being
for
too.
You.
Yeah. And I think if I had to give somebody a gift, that would be the one gift I'd hope that is left behind, is just that comfort, in that mystery.
Well, maybe they'll find it like that too, because I've heard just from some of your guests, and they're doing good works, and they're doing it in a church environment.
That's right.
And I think that's important. It is.
Oh yeah, that's the thing that I think is beautiful. How many people are called to do good, to do and help others in so many different capacities. It blows my mind. I mean, it could be anything. So many small little fissures and sufferings and pains and ailments in the world, and someone's called to do it. Someone's called to put a compress on it, to stop the bleeding. That's a beautiful thing. So, all right, that's interesting. Can we dive back in time a little bit? So I'd like to hear more about your upbringing, if you don't mind. I mean, you were talking about your mother, and that seems like that had to have been very formative, like
it was
going through that with your father, and then your mom dropping you all off at catechism, I'm assuming, in church, and then but her not attending that with you. So there's this forming that's happening, but your mother's not in that. But
that was just such a small part of what it was growing up in our household.
Yeah. What was it like?
Well, okay, it was the 60s, and a woman working what they weren't going to make near the money a man was going to make.
Yeah.
And she was determined that we were going to have what we needed, and she was going to raise us with the way that she had been raised, with good manners and proper education, all that good stuff. So she did it with friends, and part of it was having the time and money to be able to have a life outside of work and 4 kids. So what she did was get together with several others, and they formed a community theater, ACTS.
Oh.
She was one of the founding members.
Really?
Because at the time, I don't know why Lake Charles Little Theater didn't have a lot with kids, but they wanted to do the big performances like Oliver and Hello Dolly and Showboat and you name it, King and I. So that's what she did for fun, and we all participated in the theater, and we met some of the best people that to this day are my best friends.
Wow.
They were just amazing. And I remember I was in 2nd grade, Bluebirds, and we had a father-daughter supper at school, and I'm pretty sure I was panicked about what I was going to do. But my mother sent a friend of hers, Les Armas. I love him. He's gone now, but he brought me, and I didn't really know how to explain who he was. And I don't remember this, but I was told that I told all my friends he was my mother's boyfriend. Les was way younger, okay? He was probably in college. He was gay. He was in the theater, and he was just a kind soul who said he would do this. And he dressed up in a tux. He looked great.
Oh, wow.
But I never forgot it, and I was so proud.
I bet.
I didn't have to have my dad there. I had Les.
Yeah.
And other people that helped her throughout our lives. Mm-hmm. And that's where I guess a lot of who I am, we were all formed from that, from the theater, from those people that we ran into.
I see.
And I watched her go through a lot and have a hard life. But she taught us good work ethics and how to have a good time without money, which was important. And I don't know, I miss her every day. She's been gone a few years now, but I was fortunate, put it that way, to have her.
What you're talking about right there, I love hearing stories like that, because you can just, it's a snapshot of a different time, first of all. You know what I mean? A snapshot into your life particularly, but just such a snapshot of a different time. We've changed so much. I don't know that really most people know how to have a good time without some kind of distraction these days, or some
My mother did.
Yeah.
And I guess she was ahead of her time too. I remember she was a character witness for a friend. She worked with this lady, and the lady had an abusive husband. My mother knew about this. And one night, he actually kidnapped her from her mother. She had left him. And he was a sheriff's deputy. And he handcuffed her, and he was drunk, and he was beating her. It was horrible. And he told her he was going to kill her. Well, he fell asleep, and she was handcuffed. She ended up shooting him.
Wow.
And so she was arrested. And my mother was a character witness for her. She was a black lady. This was the 60s. He was from a prominent black family. And he was a sheriff's deputy. She had a lot of odds going against her. And no one was willing to stand up for her, but my mother was.
Interesting.
She got off.
So that was important to her then to take a stand.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And it didn't matter. She didn't mind going up against anybody.
Yeah.
Nothing made her afraid.
Yeah. That's something special. I think can relate to that with my dad. When you're young and you have a sort of abrasive personality in your life, a parent maybe, on one hand, as a kid, you just look at it from a child's view, and it's just like, oh my gosh, don't embarrass me, don't do that. But when you get older and you reflect on it, you realize, oh, wait a second, I may not have liked the tactics necessarily or the method, but that person was really willing to go stick their neck out for people who nobody else was willing to stick their neck out for. And so I guess I would say I hope that I've adopted some of those characteristics. I really do, because there are times when I go, hey, this is just a wrong thing. And I don't think you have to stand up with a fist all the time.
No, you don't.
But I think you have to stand up.
You just have to tell them, you know what? Go ahead and cash me out.
Yeah.
My business is done with you. If my son can't go back here,
that's right.
Neither can I.
Yeah, and take the heat. I'm willing to take the heat. That's another Christian thing there, where I guess Christ is an example. You know, when I sit and meditate on those types of things, I go, well, am I willing to have whatever cruel name tacked up over my head, you know, to put myself on full display and try to do the right thing? And I think the answer is yes, most of the time. I've probably been a coward a few times in my life, I can imagine, if I really sat and thought about it. But those are things that I remember when I was a coward and didn't do the right thing, and they stick. They burn almost.
You gotta let that go, though.
Yeah, I remember them though, because they're important for me, because I go, oh, I get to do this again. Well, you know what I mean? Like, I get to do this again. I don't have to make that same choice. I hope I've learned something, you know, and just feeling. I've always leaned towards the underdog.
Me too.
Yeah.
It just feels right.
It does. Yeah.
I was the one who stood up to the bully on the playground. That's who I am.
Had my fair share of butt kickings because of it, but yeah, I've been.
I didn't, because I was a girl. They didn't beat up girls back then, but they stopped. They stopped picking on whoever it was, because that's how bullies are. When somebody confronts them,
and I'm happy. I know it. I'm helped.
I hate to pause the program, but I want to ask you something. Did you know that you can help me and my team at Parker Brand Creative Services grow the Find the Good News signal? For less than a fancy cup of coffee, you can become an Early Risers Club patron on our Patreon page. What's Patreon? Well, it's a way for creators to fund their projects by pooling support from those really passionate people that believe in what they're doing. Do you believe in what we're doing with Find the Good News? I hope you do. We believe that there's already enough negative news in the world, even right here at home, and that good people doing good works deserve a platform to speak from too. That's why we created Find the Good News, and we believe in that simple mission. Maybe you believe in it too. If you do believe in finding and sharing good news, then head over to our Patreon page right now, or check out the link in the show description. For a commitment of $3.33 a month, you can join the Early Risers Club of Find the Good News Patreon supporters and get access to the B-Sides, a patrons-only podcast with the crew behind Find the Good News, Parker Brand Creative Services. Each time we level up, the Patreon rewards will get bigger. If you're tired of old news, bad news, and fake news, help support Find the Good News at patreon.com patreon.com/findthegoodnews. That's patreon.com/findthegoodnews. Now, back to the episode.
I love you just as well.
Yeah, that's one of my sadnesses right now is I definitely see a lot more of that in the public right now, a little more of a bullying type of attitude that's out there. It's really discouraging.
Can't imagine why.
Yeah, the whole tone, and it's very quickly just shifted. And I think honestly though, I was content to sort of ride it out, but I think I realized at some point in the last year that I again, if people just stand by and ride it out and never say anything and never stand up, then it just gives more ground to those individuals and those being. And the real battlefront for me is my heart and my mind. And that's what I hope other people understand too, is like that's really where they win if you let them get that. It reminded me of what one of Gandhi's speeches when he was trying to motivate people in India, to be a part of the nonviolent resistance, and then their arguments were, well, yeah, but they're gonna hurt me, they're gonna beat me, they're gonna take my property, they're going to potentially kill me, and then Gandhi, and I'm paraphrasing, said, and then they'll have your dead body, but they'll never have your obedience. And I was like, wow, that's something right there. There's some kind of gate that you walk through right there when you realize that they can take your body and they can take your name and your reputation, and they can, tack King of the Jews over your head and stick you on a cross, but they'll never ever have your obedience.
And that seems to be what all the great leaders, the ones that have been, well, I don't want to talk about different ones. I'll get off on a tangent about it. But in general, I know that people that have been through what Gandhi went through, that's what they say. Martin Luther King, same thing.
Yeah.
You're not going to stop me. I'm going to be peaceful about it, but I'm going to do it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, wasn't it King said something to this effect of, we'll overwhelm you with our ability to suffer. Mm-hmm. And that's a hard thing because we don't want to suffer. I mean,
no.
The minute we get a little our air conditioner is 4 degrees off, we're calling, the AC people and asking them how fast they can get there to fix it for us. That's one of the things that I want people to be comfortable, and I want to be comfortable. But at the same time, I think sometimes we can become so sedentary in our comfort that it robs us of our ability to endure anything.
Oh, I'll put like a comment on Facebook if someone's put a post up that I don't agree with, and other comments that are coming in, I don't agree with that. I'll bring it right back to the baseline.
Yeah.
Isn't this what we're really supposed to do? And I don't get ugly with them. Just leave that and go on. And it's amazing how quick the dialogue stops.
Yeah.
Because they're embarrassed.
Sure.
If you call people out, and you don't have to do it by name, but if you just bring it out there, hey, let's bring this back to what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
People stop.
Yeah, social media is such an interesting animal. I'm still navigating it and learning every day, even after all these years. It's like, how do I want to use this tool? I've over the years, I've changed my view about what kind of tool it even is.
Well, the scary part is that a lot of people use it and they abuse it. And they don't do their research, and they don't read, and they don't care that they don't. But I guess it's empowered them, but we can also use that power, and we need to.
Yeah.
Because I think if we don't, then it's just going to spiral out of control, and a lot of times that's what I've seen.
Yeah.
It has.
Yeah, that's true.
That's scary.
Yeah, and it is a really good tool for sharing information and even putting ideas out there and perspectives. I think it's a great tool for that.
Yes.
One thing is, for me, I guess I've had to realize is like, hey, be prepared for someone to not see it your way or to take your perspective. And then ask yourself before you put something out there, why are you putting it out there? Most of the time it's because I feel strongly about something. That's really what it boils down to. I mean, if I feel strongly about it, most of the time it's either because something really good has happened or there's something that's just crawling into unjust territory for me personally, and that's it. And hey, who am I? Nobody, but I'll spend the time to actually kind of flesh out an idea And hey, anybody's more than welcome to come challenge an idea. That's great, but just do it with open hands instead of closed fists. I think so often that's what really bothers me is the balled up fist mentality of entering into engagements.
You can't confront in just anywhere on social media without getting that. People are just waiting. For instance, my granddaughter was followed by this guy. She was walking to work and it scared her really bad. And I think he started coming after her. He was chasing her, and a car pulled up, and they saw this going on. And they got her, and they put her in the car, which I think at that point, it was one of those fight or flights. It was better to go with the strangers in the car than this guy who was literally coming after her.
Yeah.
She heard him running behind her, and when she turned, he was hauling it, so she took off running. The people in the car took his picture, and we put it on Facebook, and they found him. The police found him. But I posted it in one of these
like community tech pages.
And I got people saying, oh yeah, right, and that's why y'all took such a great picture of him. In other words, they were defending this whole situation that wasn't even necessary. That's what you get on social media if you go outside of your little realm of friends. That's what I've found. So you can make a comment, but don't go back and look at what they respond to. Because they're just trying to get a rise out of you. They're not really trying to have a decent conversation.
I totally get what you're saying. It's such a strange, I don't know, the whole thing is strange. So I don't know who posted it, but somebody said I'm old enough to remember a time when I didn't have to take a picture and post it every day. And I was like, I laughed at it and I thought,
of what you're eating.
Something I've been trying for a couple of weeks now is to take a 100% digital Sabbath on Sunday, and so it worked this weekend a lot better than the weekend before. But just to go, I'm plugging my phone in and just completely putting it down. Just you or your whole family? Well, just me. I haven't talked about it with anybody in my family. I mean, I like doing personal experiments first to see if there's anything valid in there, because some things I just can't do. I go, well, this discipline that I think I'm going to apply to myself. When you really get out there into the Monday, Friday schedule, you go, well, there's just too many hiccups. I can't stick to it. Now, if I lived in a monastery, that'd be different. Then it would be, very structured and you have time set aside for these things. But
my mom knew a guy who did that. In fact, his family was from Beaumont, and his grandfather discovered oil, spindletop. And he became a monk for about 3 or 4 years. And every 4 hours you get a knock on your door. It was either to fertilize your garden or tend to it or pray or eat. And he said just one morning when that knock came, he said, I want to go home.
Interesting.
So he did. But he was a really eccentric and very unique person.
Well, that's interesting. It reminds me of somebody that I sort of know. When I went to Northwestern State University, up there in Natchitoches, the campus there is adjoined with the Louisiana School for the Math, Science, and the Arts. And I remember, this is back in the 90s, early 90s, and I remember there was a monk who was one of the art teachers, and his name was Brother Michael David. And I remember, even though I didn't go to Louisiana school, I did get to go to the art gallery, and his work was incredible. Just what an incredible illustrator. So they had the professor show, the staff show, and I remember just being completely enamored with his work. Like, wow, he just had this command over the illustrations. And I just thought he was fascinating. Never talked to him, but there was something about that guy just being there. You could tell he was living to a whole different pace.
To where he is these days.
Well, let me tell you, this is very interesting. I remembered him like he stuck out to me, and so as I've gotten older, I would think about him from time to time. I can remember walking around the city and seeing Brother Michael David just kind of walking through town, with his little sandals on, doing his own thing. Had a big beard, had his head shaved, the crown shaved. Well, years later, I guess it was probably 2 years ago, I had a meeting up there. I had a project I actually was working on. Now, this is, 25 years, has went by. And I was chatting with the person, and we were reminiscing about the history of the town, and I bring him up, and I said, there was this guy who used to live right down the street from where we're meeting at in this house, and he had like glass bottles hanging everywhere, and he was a monk. His name was Brother Michael David. And she goes, oh, he still lives here. She goes, but he's not really a monk. And I said, what? And she goes, no, he just dresses like a monk and lives like a monk, and he goes by Brother Michael David, but he's not a monk. And that blew my mind. It blew my mind because what I thought was, it gets back to what we were talking about at the beginning. I was like, so his presence alone was indicative that he was living some kind of connected life.
Yeah,
like
if
spiritual.
it walks like a monk, I think he was a monk.
Yeah.
To himself.
To himself, he was. And that was a beautiful thing. And so from the person's perspective in the meeting I was with, they were like, yeah, that's kind of a little kooky to us. But for me, it actually, I didn't say it in the meeting, but like deep down, I almost was happy to find out that he wasn't a monk. It's like, so this man made a choice at some point in his life to live with a completely reconnected attitude.
That's what I'm saying. He just did it without, the supervision of whatever monks. I don't know who supervises them.
That's right.
They're different. They're not all Buddhist monks. So,
no,
I mean,
but it was just like, it made me think like, who bestows this upon this person, and why? It doesn't matter, because he still had that presence, right? And it almost made it even more beautiful that a person.
You saw that, but they were saying it like,
it's a little strange.
Yeah, don't think it's that cool.
He doesn't quite fit in, and I'm like, yeah, but how awesome is it to just not quite fit in and be beautiful like that, And so I don't know. For me, it made me happy to hear that after all these years, my perspective was right and wrong, so to speak. It was even more amazing.
I'd had to go find him. I'd have been knocking on his door for that one.
Yeah, isn't that something though?
Yeah.
And so for the world to look at a person like that, they go, oh, he's odd. He doesn't, who does that? Who wears robes, and who changes their name, and who walks around for 20 something years like with sandals and living like a monk? And I go, yeah, but who's the lunatic here? Is he the crazy one?
Yeah, or are we crazy? That's the truth. That's good.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's still there now.
He is still there. Yeah, he's still there.
That's in Natchitoches?
Yeah, he still lives it's like right past Front Street. He's got a little home there. It's got a little archway, and everything's all overgrown. And back inside there, you can see like, bird chimes and bird feeders, and like this house tucked back in there.
How neat.
I know. And it's like, again, I always have been kind of attracted to those kinds of people. You go, wow, you just separated yourself, but you're still in the world, but you're not of the world.
Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Yeah, really, really kind of a beautiful thing. Yeah, I don't know, something about what you were saying, just that man coming to your house, the monk, and doing the yard work and the gardening and all that. Just like, oh yeah, that reminds me of Brother Mike. It's funny because he'll always be in my mind. He'll always be sort of like this, holy man walking around
Well,
town.
I think he was, just because he wasn't with a specific order.
Right.
But they didn't get it, and that's okay. Some people don't.
That is interesting. Are there any standout moments though to you like that? People that you've encountered that you go, oh, throughout your life that you feel like were influential, where you say, oh, they made a hinge in my life? Without a doubt, this person influenced me.
I think most of the people that I care for, they've all had something. I take care of the elderly, and that is a passion of mine. I absolutely love it. For years, I worked with Elderly Protective Services as a supervisor of the 5-parish region, and we had guidelines, but we would go into homes and you had to make a quick assessment, sometimes in 5 minutes or less, whether or not this elderly person, age 60 and over, is the population we served. You had to determine if they were at risk. Many times the person that was considered the perpetrator was their adult child.
Really?
Or spouse. Yeah, so you're in their home, and it's just, you had to make a decision quick. So it was get in there and go straight forward, but also gain the trust of this person who more than likely has been in an abusive situation. And I found that I could do that in no time. And I think that was the influence of my grandmother and aunt. They were both up in age, but they took care of us in the summers because my mother worked, and there were no daycares back then. And I think I understood how they thought, and I understood what they wanted, and I knew about respect.
Yeah.
And I knew to respect them. So when I would go in these homes working with EPS, I was able to hit the nail on the head, and we were able to help people. And it was amazing. It was in the 90s when the state of Louisiana finally got the program. We were the last state in the union to start taking care of our elderly.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and that put the passion in me. And then later on, I just got really just tired of going through the working for 911. That was short-lived because I had this desire to help. And when I started doing caregiving, it's like, oh my God, it's so much fun because you learn so much.
Oh,
and then you're able to help somebody.
Yeah.
And so I've got probably 6 or 7 people as I stay with them till the end.
Do you?
It's just what you do.
To the end?
Yeah, because once you start helping somebody, it's because they need it. And then as they're losing their ability to remember things or how they like things, you've learned all that. So you can fill in the blanks for them. And how unfair to leave just because they're getting close to the end. So I've learned from them. Right now, I'm taking care of a guy who is 99. He'll be 100 in July.
Oh,
he's a World War II veteran.
Wow.
And he's the sweetest. He really is. And his stories are amazing and the things that he's gone through. And he just lost his wife of 72 years. She wasn't sick. We were there to take care of him. She was doing great. And one morning she was getting ready to go to the grocery, and we were going over the grocery list, just sitting next to each other. And in a moment, I noticed in her eyes something was going on. And I jumped up, and she had a seizure. And from there, I called 911. She ended up at the hospital, and it was a stroke. And she died that day. And I always believed that he wasn't going to make it if something happened to her. They were that close. 72 years. Soulmates.
Yeah.
But he's proven me wrong. And we were trying to lift him up, and he turns around and lifts us up because we're telling him, you got a lot to live for, Doc. You got your kids. He goes, and I have y'all. And that just made me feel so good. So I want to do everything for him that she taught us, because that's what she did. When we first got there, she was very resistant to help. Her children knew that she needed help. But once she realized that we were going to do it her way and just relieve her of the burden.
Yeah.
I told her one day, after 2 weeks of tug-of-war, trying to be able to cook the meals for him, she wasn't feeding him enough, and it's because she didn't understand. And I told her, I said, Doc's been retired several years, but you never got to retire. She goes, well, that's the truth. And it turned her around on it. So she let us do for her and, in essence, do for him. And so that when she did die, his world didn't just crumble. We were there for him.
Yeah.
But just hearing the stories and how brave he was with the war and the hard times they went through, and yet he still got a strong faith.
Interesting.
In God.
Yeah.
And so I get more out of that than he does of me taking care of him. But I enjoy it so much. It's not a job. It doesn't feel like it anyway. Can't believe I'm getting paid to do what I love.
How long have you been doing that?
Oh, probably about 8-9 years now.
And so how did you end up doing that? How did you get there?
I have done so many crazy things. Okay, I did the whole restaurant thing. I was 21 years old when we opened
and we haven't even talked about that.
The hamburger joint. And it was fun for a while. And then I got tired of that. And then I went to work at CARC. And I loved working with the adults with disabilities. And I helped find jobs for them out in the community, supported employment. And that was fun because then I got the job coach. And what you do is bridge that gap so that when you leave, they have people there who understand their needs, take them under their wing. And anyway, they were secure in their position. Some of them are there for years. And then from there, I did some stuff like paralegal work. But just wasn't any joy in it, Same thing with the 911. And then I went to the nursing home to advocate for my aunt, who at this time was almost 102. We were having problems, and my mother was not at all happy. And your emotions are high when that's going on. And I just kind of kept the peace in the meeting. And so I was approached by the ombudsman and asked if I would like to work with Elderly Protective Services. Come put your application in. So that's what I did for a few years until, probably 5 or 6 years. And then the state of Louisiana took it over. At the time, we were pilot programs. The Council on Aging here had the program, but Volunteers of America New Orleans had it, Sheriff's Department in the Northern Parish And so when the state took it back, one of the criteria was that you had to have a specific degree to be the supervisor. So we lost our jobs.
I see.
But it was good because it was just a platform for what I really enjoy doing.
Yeah.
So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's interesting. You really have done quite
That's not all of them. That's just the ones that I'm touching on. Yeah.
Yeah. And so this you feel like really gets right into your heart. This is where you're at.
This is it.
Yeah. Well, that's what Alita had said, but she didn't tell me too much. So I was waiting to hear it from you. Like, what was the story behind that? So, all those years, then it sounds like many people have touched your life.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Too many to really think of anyone in particular.
Well, do you get to share, though, any of those stories with other people? I mean, is that part of it? I mean, for you, you're hearing a lot of stories and experiencing their lives with them, but do you find value in sharing some of that with others?
Well, what I find that I need to do a lot is help with the families. Because they're having to go through something that's role reversal. That's really hard. It's things that I did with my own mother. So I know how difficult that can be. And to be able to provide the resources that I know are out there to assist, and the comfort and the words. Sometimes it's just what they need to hear. Somebody who's not emotionally involved, like all of them are. I mean, this is usually a terrible time for people. When your parents start losing the ability to take care of themselves, it crushes everybody. It just does. But it's a natural progression. So when I get in there and I'm able to help, then that relieves their worries, their responsibilities, to where they can actually just enjoy them.
Do you think that's something that we are either gaining or losing in this world? The respect for the elderly and the desire to care for them to the end.
Well, I think in our country we're getting better because it's been so poor. I mean, it just has.
Yeah.
We put them in. That's where poor houses come from, flop houses, and then different regulations and laws are made, and all of a sudden we have to take care of them. Well, that's okay, but now we're getting to the point where let's do it with the waiver program per se, where you can actually apply for a waiver to take care of someone in their home, because it's less expensive anyway and it's better. The least restrictive setting. So we're learning, and in the process we are learning the importance of our elderly people. I mean, they're revered in some countries, and they haven't been here. How many shows on TV have an older person starring in them? Just to explain that, there's not very many. The Golden Girls, and they're usually a joke when they do. You know, a Red Fox back in the day, Sanford and Son.
Yeah, Matlock.
Yeah, well, he wasn't even old.
Not really. I don't know. For me, when I was watching it, he was.
Yeah, exactly. But all of those things, I think that's changing. Especially because the baby boomers are about to be the most populous people for the first time in the history of this country. Age 60 and over will be the majority. That's like walking in the mall and 4 out of 5 people are over the age of 60. That's going to be weird. It's almost here.
That's interesting, yeah.
So, now it's time we better start thinking about it, because now we're the majority. We can vote in all these things that are going to make our lives better and more enriched. So,
yeah. Well, and you have a unique perspective on that, because you work in... How many days a week do you work?
Actually, 5.
5?
12-hour shifts.
Okay.
I took off today to be here.
Really?
Yeah.
So you work 12-hour shifts.
Well,
is
not
that
all day.
the same people, or is it different people?
I just have one person.
Oh, one person?
But
okay.
what I do, if somebody calls and just word of mouth, they're looking for somebody. If I know a good sitter, I'll usually go make the assessment, so that I can tell the family, you know what, right now you don't need 24-hour care. This is all you really need. Just a few hours. Let's try this, and we'll work up to it. And if I know someone, I'll refer them.
I see.
I don't have an agency per se, and I wouldn't want one. I don't want that responsibility, but I do like to find good people.
That's interesting. So you operate as an individual, then you don't operate through.
You'd be surprised how many people call. We heard about you. I need some help with my parents. I don't know what to do. I don't know what's out there. Those kind of questions.
And it's just word of mouth. Someone gets your name and number. That's really beautiful, actually.
So it's been fun. It's been very rewarding. I've probably helped about maybe 30 to 40 families.
Wow.
Get people either whether it's care in their home, sometimes it's rehab through a nursing home, because I've learned all those things, because we had to do placements. For the people that we helped, you didn't just take them out of your home, you had to figure out what to do with them.
Right.
So a lot of times they just need a good, maybe it's a psychiatric exam, because maybe some of the medicines they're taking, they've been taking care of themselves, they're starting to lose it. Next thing you know, they're going to 2 to 3 doctors getting the same medicine, and the reaction is causing the problems that their family's seeing. So it may be that they can stay on their own. Let's get them back on track. Do the assessment first with a professional, see what's going on, and then...
That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want somebody to just deteriorate. You want to actually help them.
Well, a lot of people, that's what would happen. Oh, you're losing it. You've got to go in a nursing home. Next thing you know, you find out it's because they weren't on the right medicines. A simple UTI can cause you to have memory loss, confusion, irritability. You might think it's a whole different ballgame, dementia, when it's actually just that they need to be on an antibiotic. It's that simple or that complex.
Yeah. And so you're able to give like that one-on-one personal care where you can see.
Well, we're at an age too where a lot of people have moved out of this area for better jobs, other places, but their families are here. They're parents and they're on their own. And they only come home to see them for a holiday, and in that brief time they're panicked because they don't know what's going on.
Yeah, I gave an elderly lady a ride home, I guess about a month ago, from one of the shopping centers where she approached me in Lake Charles, and I didn't know where she lived, but it was a long drive, and so we had a lot of time to talk, and it was exactly what you just described. I started asking her about her family and her church life and just different things, and basically what I discovered is that she hadn't seen her kids in years.
Isn't that sad?
Yeah, and she was just living alone in a trailer. Walking wherever she could, whenever she could. Or
taking rides from total strangers.
Taking rides. I mean, at the mercy. I know. That's actually, you're right. And it's interesting because I thought that day. I was like, just to go, hey, I can't get home. I need to get home.
Well, that's one of the questions I ask when I go do an assessment is, would you open the door if there was a man out there that you didn't know? And they'll say, oh, no. Well, what if he said he needed help, that somebody was in the car? Oh, well, then, yeah, I'd let him in for that. So, in other words, they would.
Yeah, right. With just a slight manipulation or shift in story. Man. So, is that hard at first? I mean, it sounds like you're with them for many, many years sometimes.
Oh, but it's like losing family over and over again. That's what it feels like. But I know, and I keep saying every time, well, this next one I'm not going to get that close to.
Do you say that?
Well, you can't help it. Yeah, I do.
That seems like I don't know if I could do that. I don't know if I could. I might tell myself that, but I know myself well enough to know I wouldn't be able to actually live up to that.
Well, you do. I mean, but you get better.
Yeah.
That's where faith. That's where faith comes in. It really does.
Yeah, because you know where it's heading. I mean, ultimately for all of us. I mean,
right.
So it's not like.
But to sit with someone as they die more than once. Not always the person on the shift. I think that's another thing that God decides who's going to be there for that moment. But yeah,
you probably end up having a lot of different roles with these people. You know what I mean? Like, as a friend, a caregiver, but also a translator. Yeah, even a spiritual companion to a large degree, I would imagine. And then also historian.
Well, and theirs, because they can't remember sometimes. For instance, you take care of someone and their loved one has died, their spouse, and they're trying to tell a story that you've probably heard 50 times to somebody else, and they used to look at their wife for that word that would get them back on track. I can fill that in.
Yeah.
That's why I say get help before you absolutely have to have it, at least to some degree, so someone knows your likes and dislikes. I've always said I'm going to write this book, and it's going to be, this is what you need to know about me. And you can bring that book with you wherever you end up. For instance, if I were to have to go into a nursing home, don't bring me into the room where they're playing bingo. I would rather have Alexa on and listen to some music from the 70s.
Yeah.
But somebody better write it down. Who's going to be there for your wishes if you're not able to tell them?
Right.
So it does help to have somebody. And we're not all fortunate enough to be able to afford to pay for someone in our own home.
Right.
But that's where I wish we would come up with like a group home for elderly. Maybe 4 people per house and have a big great room so that the wheelchairs can get everywhere, and you've got one person cooking for everyone, and they each have their own room with their own bathroom, and then one guest room, and then they can alternate by calendar whose relative wants to come visit for a weekend.
I see.
But all four together could afford one person.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense, actually.
You know?
Has anybody done that?
Well, I think there's some places in Colorado that have done some similar. Maybe like take an old motel and make it assisted living for the elderly. But I think mine would be more cost effective because a lot of people are going to only have Social Security.
Yeah.
It's not a whole lot.
Right.
Let's just say $800 a month. But if you do that times 4, then you can afford to pay somebody and to keep one house and to remain as independent as possible.
That's really interesting. And, and you know, when you're in it like you are, you can have, I guess, these productive thoughts like that and plans because you can see what the actual need is versus what, you know, a perceived need from the outside.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I could listen to you talk about that all day. You actually, have you ever thought about writing a book about it, about your experiences?
Yeah, and I probably should.
I think it'd be of high value to have something like that, especially for other caregivers. I mean, to really get some perspective, or someone who's listening to this. You know, I mean, I could see imagine someone listening to this going, you know, I have those qualities. I think I could do this, and maybe they're young and on the front end, but being able to access your experience and advice would be really high value.
Well, it's a need right now, but it's going to be an even greater need when the baby boomers get to that point. Because right now, you know, 60s and new 50 and all that good stuff. But there's going to be a time when they can no longer take care of themselves. And the way that the nursing homes are set up now, that's not conducive to our lifestyle.
No, it's kind of depressing, actually.
It is depressing.
Very depressing. I mean,
but there's ways around that. You know, first of all, that home that I just described, but if not, at least revamping what we consider. But, you know, there again, it takes so long to do things like that because that's, for the most part, it's going to require some law to change. Because certain things are mandated by the state. That's why if you have your own home. But even those are regulated to some degree. So I think it's like you said, somebody has to be in the situation to know what's really needed and then take that, extract that information and apply it.
Yeah. Interesting.
But, yeah, there's a need.
So I'd like to jump one more place with you, if you don't mind, because we've mentioned it, is the hamburger joint. I'd like to just hear a little bit about that history.
Well, the way I got involved was 1977, I guess.
And we're talking about Cottons, right?
Cottons. Yeah, Kenny and I were married, and he wanted to go into the restaurant business with, her name was Yana Reedus, and she owned the Colonial Inn on Broad Street. It's on the corner of Broad and Reed in Lake Charles. A lot of people knew about it. The old Mary Ann's Cafe, they were all related. There were like 3 or 4 Greeks that had come here, and they were all together, and they would fight, and they'd have their own restaurant. Anyway, she was running that. Her husband had died, and so Kenny went over there to learn the business, and we were going to like franchise with her. But by the time we were ready, she was ready to retire. And she said, no, I've got grandchildren. My daughter lives in Lafayette. I just can't do it. Y'all go ahead and wish you the best. She was one of our first customers. So we did. We opened that up with literally a shoestring budget. We had nothing for advertising. We were right across from McNeese where Smoothie King is now.
Oh, okay.
So we just opened the door.
I didn't realize that.
Threw the onions on the grill. Pierre was there. Pierre with the dairy barn. And that was it. The smell brought him in.
Wow.
And the rest was history. And that's been going on for several years, so...
That's interesting.
Yeah, at one time we had 3. We had one on South Ryan across from St. Pat's.
Yeah.
And then we had one in Beaumont.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But it's crazy. You can go to Beaumont, and their favorite burger is the Whataburger.
Oh.
It's way different. Just, I guess, I don't know, people's taste.
Yeah. I've never really been a fan of that.
And then the spinoff was when Pierre took it and ran with it, and he's been doing great.
Yeah, see, I learned that today. I had no idea that Dairy Barn was basically a spinoff, as you just put it. Yeah, I remember going to Dairy Barn after high school, as we were talking about that earlier, and I would go grab a burger there and then go walk to my job every day. And then, he had shut that location down. And I'd graduated high school by then, and then years later, here comes Dairy Barn again.
He's doing great, and he's got like po' boys that are unbelievable.
Yeah.
And fish and shrimp and the whole Borden's thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, that's wild.
Yeah.
So what year was it that you were done with Cottons?
Probably 87.
Okay.
88, something like that.
So who has it now?
Kenny still has it.
Okay.
On Oak Park. And then my daughter has Cotton's Downtown. Is what it's called. That's my oldest.
So it's still
daughter.
in the family then.
Yeah.
Interesting. That's cool. So interesting.
All about burgers.
Yeah, golly, man. I mean, I remember those commercials. Cotton's the king of the grill.
You remember that little girl?
I do remember.
Okay, well, that was during the time when Alita and I had met doing Oliver, and we were like the ones that took care of the kids. Her son Jason was in it. Well, my daughter Kate, who was 4, was crazy about Jason. He was a few years older. She wouldn't do the commercial if she couldn't say his name.
How funny.
So my mother wrote the commercial, so we had to incorporate that. So at some point she's on the phone and she says, I called up my boyfriend Jason, asked him out to dinner. Why? Hamburgers, of course. And that was when we were running the specials, $1 hamburgers.
Wow. So that's how you met. I was going to ask you that. How did you and Alita Barnes become friends?
We had kids in the play together. And so on Friday night after rehearsals, we would go to, I don't know, it was IHOP or something like that. Because they had to have those chocolate chip pancakes at 10 o'clock at night.
That's funny.
And then thanks to Facebook, I started thinking about Alita one day. I said, I wonder where she is. And I put her name in, and at the time she was in New Orleans.
Yeah.
So it was fun just to reconnect.
It's funny because she influenced my life a great deal, and she was one of those people that I wondered if I was ever going to get to really see again. And many years ago, when my son was in the, I guess, 7th or 8th grade, his chorus group had went to New Orleans. So he and I just stayed the weekend in New Orleans, and walked all around downtown, and just had a good time. I mean, he was little still, junior high, and we ran into Jason. He was there, I believe, for the same thing, but it was a different group with his kids. And so he and I happened to go grab lunch one day while the kids were performing, and we got to talking. He said, well, we're going to dinner with Mom tonight. And I was like, wait, your mom lives here? And he goes, yeah, she lives in town. He said, well, look, we'll come pick you up at the hotel. So Jason and his family came and picked me and Jonah up, and then we all went and ate at Giacomo's with Alita.
That's cool.
And boy, it was just great. I had such a good time that night, and I was like, man, I really needed that. And so I guess it was last year when we started this show. I had just kicked it off, and we were down at the homecoming parade, and she came walking by, and I was like, hey, what are you doing here? And we chatted, and she said, I moved back to town, kind of gave me her quick update. And so I said, I got to get you to come on this podcast and let me talk to you.
That's so cool. Yeah, she's my movie buddy. We go to all the movies together.
Do you?
Yeah.
Yeah, she's great. She really is. I love her a lot. I feel blessed to be able to have kind of a relationship with a teacher, because teachers are so important. They're so much more valuable than what you're getting in that classroom if you really allow yourself to connect with one, in your life. She must have been the one, because you're not the first student that's told me that. No, I think a lot of people have had that experience. Just had some kind of it factor, Well, for me, and I don't know how it is with everybody, but she made me feel seen. And I've heard other teachers who's been on the show that have said similar things, that students have told them that they felt like for the first time they really saw them. Somebody really looked at them. And, I had parents who loved me and family, and I mean, I was loved by a lot of people, but for some reason at that particular time in my life, I was going through some stuff, and nobody really was paying attention that I was going through it, and my family really didn't know, but she somehow I intuited that to whatever degree that there was just a need there, and she approached me at the right time. And
Isn't
it
that
just
something. That's how all this came to be.
Yeah. I love life in that regard, when you can connect like that. And us sitting here at this table,
I know.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It is interesting. I mean, even the Pierre connection and the dairy barn, I mean, that may seem like maybe inconsequential to somebody else, but to me, I go, there's just these forces at play across time, and they're really elastic.
They really are. It's a trip when you find out how somebody knows someone. In this community, it's all the time.
Yeah.
If we talk long enough, we know a lot of people.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure. So did you stomp around Sulphur at all whenever you were young? I mean, was it
Not really Sulphur, no. But I was looking. I noticed you do. But Pierre moved over here, and that's really my only connection. Well, and I went to from grade school up with Daphne Fish. I went to school, and Daphne's husband is your mayor.
Yes, okay. And that's right. I was going, why is that name
She's
so
amazing. She has always been such a sweet, kind person.
Yeah.
So I just have to believe that he's great.
Yeah, I mean, I hear nothing but good things. He and I haven't had a chance to talk really.
You need to get him on the show.
Yeah, I've talked to Erica over at the city. We're going to try and line something up. I think it would be really good. He'd be the first public official who's actually sat at this table. So this has been great.
And I'm happy, I know it.
This episode's Fishing for Goodies Fishbowl sponsor is Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center in Sulphur, Louisiana. I don't know what you look for when you travel, but one of the things I look for when I'm putting together my itinerary is a unique museum or gallery in the city I'm traveling to. I do this almost every time I go to a new city, but if I'm being honest, I'm guilty of not always doing that very thing right here at home in Sulphur, Louisiana. That's really a shame, because we have one of the most interesting, historically relevant, and culturally rich corners in any city in the country about 2 minutes from where I'm sitting right now. I'm talking about the Brimstone Museum and Henning Cultural Center. Have you ever really thought about why our city is named Sulphur? They've got a permanent exhibit on the history of the sulfur industry that answers that simple question and more. You really get a full scope of just how important the sulfur mining industry was to the development of Southwest Louisiana and the impact it had on the rest of the world. Yes, the rest of the world. On the same property, right next door to the museum, is the Henning Cultural Center, presenting some of the most interesting, modern, and culturally relevant local art shows I've ever seen. My dear friend Tom Trahan and the Brimstone Historical Society have really worked hard to give us this treasure, and it's a multifaceted jewel that I plan to take advantage of more often. You don't have to wonder what their hours are, or how to get there, or what shows are coming up. Just go to brimstonemuseum.org like I did, and subscribe to their mailing list right there on the homepage. That's brimstonemuseum.org. Tom will make sure you start getting the announcements for each and every new show at the gallery. But you don't have to wait for the mail to arrive to enjoy this historical local treasure. You don't have to be guilty, like me, of overlooking a local wonder that conveniently sits next to the Grove, one of the most beautiful walking parks in Southwest Louisiana. Drop in and say hi to Tom for me. Tour the museum and center, and make sure to tell Tom that you heard about Brimstone Museum on Find the Good News. Now, let's take that dive in the fishbowl.
I gotta keep you for a few more minutes because this is the part of the show where we do the fishbowl. Do you know about this?
I don't.
You get draw 3 questions out of there and then answer them. And
I answer?
You answer them, yeah. Now, there's a bunch, so dig in there and get whatever you want.
Okay. Would you host a foreign exchange student for a year or be an exchange student? I would do both.
Really?
My husband did this.
Really?
Mm-hmm. He did. They had the Chateau Charles
back
I remember
in the
day.
Yeah.
And Andy went to France and then brought somebody. So, yeah, I would love to do that.
Yeah, I think it'd be exciting to do either one.
This is kind of neat. Did you make these up, or is this a...
Some of them I did. Some of them guests did. Some are parts of old cannibalized games.
If you could compete in the Olympics, which sport would you choose? Wow. Well, if I could, it would be volleyball because that used to be my game.
Oh, yeah?
But, yeah. But I guess I could go further and say I'll go ahead and be the gymnast. Would you rather have a rewind button in your life or a fast forward?
Oh,
well, I guess that depends on the moment.
That's right.
There's certain times I like to hurry up and fast forward, but there's also some rewind. I think I'm okay with not having either.
Yeah.
I don't want to go back.
Really?
Because if I didn't do it right, I learned from it. If I did do it right, I don't want to fool with it.
Yeah.
And then a fast forward, what would I be missing?
Yeah, I think I might.
And the worst of times is usually the best.
I think I'd like that rewind button if I had to, not to redo anything, but to just, if I could observe, like maybe something I experienced and went, man, I sure wasn't paying attention. And just like I could rewind and know to pay attention, not change anything, just be aware.
It wouldn't be the same though.
I don't know. There's things that I know that I should have been more present.
And then you would, but you'd be further along in your journey. I guess you could be.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Fast forward or rewind. I got one last question.
Okay.
It's on the back of that yellow mug that belongs to you now.
Oh, cool. Did anything good happen today? Yes, it did actually. Do I need to share that? I'll tell you.
You can tell us, yeah.
Well, I went by the dairy barn before I came here.
Yeah.
And and got you something
Got
that's in that card.
I know. Can I open it?
Yeah.
It's not too private, is it?
No.
I could share it with everyone.
And it didn't cost me anything. I tried to pay for it.
Yeah, you came in here bearing gifts today.
Right.
It's a card. Since God is everywhere, may you feel that He's as close as a gentle hug. Boy, that's what we want. Some comfort, huh?
Right.
I hope you're feeling better. Yeah, I had the flu last week. Oh my gosh, I'm still kind of recovering as far as. Hey, and I got a gift certificate to Dairy Barn.
Since he says you never go, he says, I don't know this guy. So yeah,
he knows me. I know he knows me.
He's gonna be like, oh man, it was you.
Yeah. He'll ask me because I think I want to say the last time I saw him, we talked about Daddy because I didn't think he realized Daddy had passed away, and so we caught up. And it's been a little bit. It's been a minute. I've seen him. He just hadn't seen me. But they're busy in there.
Yeah.
You know, you can't say hi to everybody. If he did, he'd be there all
probably
day.
until 1 o'clock. All he's going to be doing is cooking.
That's so nice, man. She came bearing gifts today. You got a fresh lemonade. I got a beautiful
that
card.
was also Pierre's like, bring
and I got
lemonade.
a note in here. I'm going to save this for private though.
That's fine. That's fun.
Yeah, that's very nice. Man, thank you. This has been a good experience.
It was fun.
I hope you had a good time. And you were like, hey, how's this going to go? What are we going to talk about?
That doesn't mean you have to air it. I don't know if there's any information anybody else would want to hear, but
I've aired every single one of them. Every one of them. You know, unsung heroes a lot of times is what it is. Just people that are doing good things. And I mean, you obviously are.
And I love you just as well.
Thanks for listening to my conversation with Eugenie Tullos. If you found something good in this conversation, consider helping me keep the signal strong by supporting Good News at patreon.com/findthegoodnews. I thank you for pressing play, for listening, and for sharing good news.